We're here to idea everyone, to fire up your curiosity and connect you with the people and ideas that shape our world. Watch, listen, understand, connect, create. Let's move the human story forward together.
Hello and welcome to The Poetry of Science, a podcast which provides insight into new scientific research via the medium of poetry. I'm your host, Dr. Sam Illingworth, and each week I'll be introducing you to some of the latest scientific findings and sharing a selection of science-themed poetry. After all, we could all do with a little bit more poetry in our lives. In this episode, I'll be exploring new research which has found evidence of a beautiful songbird potentially becoming an invasive species in the UK. Plump and yellow babblers lie in wait, their sleek red bills lined up in rows like restless recruits, waiting to march. Warming skies sign advance as cottage gardens aid and abet, cornucopia of seed, suet and half-eaten toast sprinkle platform tables with hopes of seeing spring. Cages hang unhinged, as unringed squads of curved and distant colours blot out our morning with their broken, scolding song. This poem is inspired by recent research published in IBIS, which has identified how the red-billed leothrix, a small brightly coloured bird native to subtropical Asia, is threatening to change the soundscape of the British dawn chorus. Invasive non-native species, or INS, are defined as species that have been introduced by humans to novel environments outside their natural range, and which can have negative impacts on native species and ecosystems through factors such as resource competition, disease transmission, and predation. As such, INS are a major threat to global diversity and need to be monitored carefully. Worldwide, there are believed to be more than 200 species of birds that are potential INS. Two examples within Europe include the ruddy duck and the African sacred ibis, both of which have had significant negative effects on native birds. Climate change can assist the spread of INS by improving the suitability of new regions, whilst other human activities such as supplementary bird feeding, for example via bird feeders in gardens, can also benefit invasive birds. Similarly, several non-native songbirds have become naturalised in Europe, resulting from the trade in wild caught birds from Asia and Africa throughout the 20th century. In this new study, researchers have observed how the red-billed leothrix, a small brightly coloured bird native to subtropical Asia, is potentially emerging as an example of another INS in the UK, with climate change and supplementary feeding creating potentially habitable regions in which they can breed and thrive. Where red-billed leothrixes have become established elsewhere, for example in continental Europe, Japan and Hawaii, as a result of escapees and releases from the caged bird trade, they can become an abundant and dominant component of the wild bird community. As well as having a negative impact on other British wildlife, for example through competition with native birds and as a vector for the spread of exotic plants and infectious diseases, the red-billed leothrix is also vocally dominant, and its loud and frequent song could significantly alter the soundscape of Britain's dawn chorus. In this study, the researchers observed that there have been 16 recordings of up to 16 individual red-billed leothrix in the wild in the UK during 2019 to 2022, including at least 2 cases of successful wintering. However, this is likely to be an underestimate. Given that the species is likely to benefit from human activities, namely climate change and garden bird feeding, it is essential to continue to monitor observations of the red-billed leothrix closely and for action plans to be developed in order to protect the British wildlife and soundscape of the future. Now that you've heard the science, let me read the poem to you again. Plump and yellow babblers lie in wait, their sleek red bills lined up in rows like restless recruits, waiting to march. Warming skies sign advance as cottage gardens aid and abet, cornucopia of seed, suet and half-eaten toast sprinkle platformed tables with hopes of seeing spring. Cages hang unhinged as unringed squads of curved and distant colours blot out our morning with their broken, scolding song. In this section of the podcast, I'd like to share a poem written by another poet on a topic related to the science that has been discussed so far. In this episode, I'll be reading Songbird by John Brehm. John Brehm is an American poet who was born in Lincoln, Nebraska in 1955. Educated at the University of Nebraska and Cornell University, his poetry collections include The Sea of Faith, published in 2004, Help Is on the Way, published in 2012, and No Day at the Beach, published in 2020. He now lives in Portland, Oregon, and teaches for Mountain Writers Series in Portland, Oregon, and for the Lighthouse Writers Workshop in Denver, Colorado. Songbird by John Brehm. Even though I have not seen it, I know how it could be, how when the skylark flees from a falcon's quick pursuit, it will turn sometimes and begin to sing, as if to say, being eaten by a falcon is the last thing in the world I'm worried about. You cannot catch me, tra-la-la, I've got enough breath to waste on a song like this, which you may as well enjoy before I vanish into air. And the raptor knows it's true, knows that anyone foolish enough to sing in such a circumstance is quite beyond ever being caught, and that for all his hunger, he'll be given just a song, tumbling through the air, as the body he desires disappears. Thank you for listening to the Poetry of Science.
Thank you very much for being with us for this episode of the ideaXme Show. ideaXme is a global platform. Our mission is to move the human story forward by sharing knowledge of the future. You can find us on all major audio networks at www.radioideaXme.com, on YouTube and Vimeo. Please subscribe.